we've now been relegated to Caesar salads in plastic containers from Aldi. Hi, I'm Andy.
And I'm Roger.
And welcome to The Middle,
where we try to have thoughtful conversations
about awkward topics
on our search to find the middle.
That's fatphobic.
I don't feel war. I just own halfway to Siwa.
A few moments ago, Buckingham Palace announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
I act as if God exists.
Put your masks on.
How dare you! You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words.
Merry Christmas, Roger.
Merry Christmas, Andy. How you doing?
Yeah, it's I'm presuming it's a rainy night. It's not yet Christmas Eve for us, but we're conscious that this will come out the night before Christmas or the day before Christmas, and I think rain's forecast, isn't it, for Sydney?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my memory is a bit of a blur the last 5 years in Christmas time, but I either remember it being blisteringly hot, like so hot you can't even go outside, or raining, and nothing in between. So I don't know, maybe this keeps up that tradition for us this year.
A bit of a different Christmas this year, though, it feels.
Yeah, well, in what way?
I think we have had a few years of, shall we say, relative comfort. I don't know what interest rates were this time last year, rental prices, inflation, all these things. It feels like we're in a different universe 12 months, certainly 24 months ago, when we're swimming in all the stimulus money and the easy monetary policy settings from the RBA, and they've really strangled the joy of Christmas out of us this year, haven't they?
I suppose so. As a someone who is not in the property game at the moment and not directly affected by rents at this very moment, it's just more of the same.
At least those petrol prices are still out there to sting you.
True, I haven't gone EV just yet. Let's kind of set the scene a little bit. On the scales of being totally prepared for Christmas, everything sorted, and you just have to sit back and relax through this next week. Where are you?
Oh, I like that question. I'm a minus 25 because I'm also making the very poor decision to move house just before Christmas. So we're by the time this episode's come out, we hopefully, touch wood, will have moved and everything will have gone really swimmingly, of course. Yeah, so Christmas is on the Monday this year, so it's coming out Sunday, so tomorrow, but we're recording this on the Wednesday, so we're still a few days out, and so we're moving on Saturday. That's when the removalists come, but of course now we're in I know you moved in this past 12 months, and you probably remember, this frantic kind of just cleaning up and getting everything in boxes, throwing stuff away. Like it's quite,
it's
horrendous.
So overwhelming. It's just like it's the worst. And I think everyone can relate to that, right? And especially if you're moving from a big house, but even if you're not, every move has its own challenges. But it to me, it is the epitome of like a big mess that you do not want to deal with, right? Like every part of your being, I don't want to deal with this. Like I don't want to have to clean this up. I don't want to have to go through that drawer that I've been avoiding. And it's always terrible.
I must admit, I do sort of feel there is a necessary evil about it, like because I don't know if this is the right analogy, but it's a bit like getting the plaque out of your arteries or something. Like, you leave it too long, they clog up, and it just the whole system starts to fail. And this is a good process of resetting and getting, and like even just being able to clean things in a way that you can't clean them when they're full of shit, right? So yeah I think that's a good
What did we talk about the other week around removing all the homeless people from the city before the Chinese consulate comes in? Yeah. But it's actually quite interesting for you though, because you've always been someone that's sworn by, I just need my suitcase, right? Like I'm very minimalistic and all that kind of stuff.
I do live with other people, so and it's funny because
so none of it's yours. It's all
well,
it's all your wife and kids.
Not to dob in any of my family members, but like my week so far has been about one night's work dealing with my stuff, and then I'm done, and then every other night's been doing other people's stuff, like or sorry, that's not 100% true, like common areas and stuff. But my wife's still she's still working through her things, and the other thing too, and we've got quite different personalities in terms of general approach. So I'm all about just get it done. Like I'm happy to like cop a bit of like collateral damage, just if I can get it packed quickly and I can get the job done, like because there's a lot of stuff to do and it all needs to be done. So whereas she's quite like methodical and wants to sort of pack it in a certain way, wants to clean everything before putting. I'm just like, well, my view anyway is we don't have to, like, there's just too much stuff to do. If you have lots of time, you can do it perfect, but not.
Yeah, it's such a cliche, but it's when you start packing, right, and you've got the energy at the start of the pack, at the move, everything is very labeled and indexed, and you're very proud of yourself, right? And then by the end of the move, every box just becomes like a misc box. It's just like misc 1 and misc 2, because you've just got stuff that you can't deal with, that drawer, and you just collect so much stuff over time.
All right, so tell me, that's me, and I'm very much yet to fully turn my attention to getting ready for Christmas. Although I think I've got most of the Christmas shopping done, so that's a bonus. How about you?
Yeah, I'm actually feeling pretty good this year. It was a bit of a shaky start, right? And I of course I've been a stay-at-home parent for the last 6 months, so I kind of had visions of me getting all Martha Stewarty and having everything packaged and a little bit of an extra slap and tickle for Christmas, right? Because I'm at home. It's been quite the opposite. It's been a white knuckle ride, if there ever was one. So I am quite proud of myself that we've got all of the main presents and things taken care of for the kids and all that. And now the attention turns to hosting duties between my sister and myself, and around Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And, we are catering for, 20 plus people. So it's a big kind of hosting duty. And pretty much every night this week, I'm in the kitchen cooking, preparing something, so that on the day can all come out together to feed this horde of 20 Asian people. So it's pretty intense, but I feel like we've got it. We've got most of the logistics down, and I'm using everything at my at my disposal to handle this logistical challenge. I'm getting deliveries. I'm getting kind of like sharing duties. I'm having like things done in advance. It's a crazy time at the moment, but I'm pretty well prepared. I am left with the feeling of I've bought too many presents, and I think we spoke about this last year, and I am keen to kind of check in a year on from that episode about how you approach buying presents for your kids, because I've felt the sting again this year, and not so much in terms of money, although that is there, but more just like that question in the back of your head is like, well, am I spoiling the kids? Have I kind of like missed a beat here, right? Have I gone overboard? Have I missed the mark? So I'm pretty keen to kind of understand actually how you approach that.
Okay. So last year we did an episode on Christmas controversies, and we sort of went through a few of them. And we'll do something similar today, but if you do want to go back and listen to our earlier edition, that was actually our second episode. So episode 2, if you want to go back on our feed and listen to that, if you're hungry for more after this. But let's start with that. I think it's worth like riffing on that as well. Like, when is it okay to give money as well? Because I think that's where we're transitioning now this year. So to answer your specific question, I think when we get like a Christmas list from my son, and like I've got one child, so I don't have like, it's not like if I spend $300 on one kid, that's actually, you got to like triple it, or that's it's not like that for us. So we kind of have that sort of privilege to be able to do that. But nonetheless, when we get the Christmas wish list, it's like every item. We're not talking stocking fillers. We're talking like every item is like $200, $300, $400. So,
Wow.
so we kind of have to say very quickly, no, just like be realistic. So this year, I think we've got one. I'm not going to like spoil what the actual presents are, but we have one decent present, and then we have a handful of like other smaller presents. But I think that's a good balance because you get the decent present is like that's where the value is, and is some like it's curated, like we know that it is something that he will use and that we'll get value out of. And then on the kind of the stocking filler stuff, it's like accessories for that present, or it's like they're just little kind of maybe they will, sit in some drawer in like 6 months' time, and yes, won't be used anymore. They're not like big purchases either, so it kind of works out. But like the question of money, like when to give money and is money okay? We used to give like gift card, but like money is just so much better. I think money is preferred from the kids. Like what kid doesn't prefer cash, right? As opposed to, like, get this little piece of plastic that I might remember to use, like, as opposed to, I can use this cash everywhere. Yeah. And like, I think if, and then we had a conversation last year about like the hubris of thinking that what a 14-year-old boy wants or girl wants, like let them decide. So yeah. Anyway, how about you?
Yeah. Well, look, the kids are younger, right? So it makes it, and we do have Christmas lists and things like that, and putting Santa aside, because right now the kids are still very much in Santa mode, right? And so you can't even push back that hard because they might even come. My daughter often comes up with concoctions of toys and objects that don't even really exist in the real world. And then I'm like, oh, where did you see this? And she's like, oh no, I made it up. It's like, well, how's that going to work? She's like, well, Santa's magic, isn't he? He can do it, right? And then other times it's like, well, this is very expensive. It's like, well, Santa doesn't need money. He has like elves to do it. So she's got all the loopholes, right? So it's a bit of a, working up against a bit of a fallacy here and a bit of a hard edge. But I would say that it's harder to get that hero gift when they're young, really. Like, especially one that they will really use, that that they will use and that will grow with them and that will be fun, right? Like, I think that are the points of the pyramid that you want, right? You can get them something that is very useful, but that might not be fun for them. And so it's harder to do the thing that you're talking about where, like, if you have your son or like a teenager, you can get them like a console, then accessories and things, and they'll be like, oh my God, this is amazing, and I'll play with it for the next year or whatever. But when the kids are younger, you don't really want to do that, right? So it does make it harder, and what usually happens is it fragments into smaller purchases, and it leaves you in the end with this feeling of like, you've got all these like fragmented little things. Well, not little.
And it's harder to move home afterwards as well.
Yeah. But you wonder, you kind of go, oh, there's a lot of stuff under the tree, but it's also, does it still leave the child feeling delighted? Like, do they feel like they've gotten a big present? And so I think that's the balance when the kids are a bit younger. And I often feel like that. And just as a bit of a context, right? One of the things coming from my upbringing, and my mum actually says this to me pretty much every year, that we only got one present, like from mum and dad, not Santa. And it was just one, right? So it was very lean. It was very frugal growing up, right? And that was like that was the experience for us growing up. So to be seeing the next generation get like, we're not talking one gift, they're getting like double-digit gifts when it's all said and done, is like, it's a big shock to my parents, and even to have to remind myself sometimes. It's like, oh yeah, I only got one gift every year, until that train ran out, and then you didn't get any gifts because you're an adult. So that's the kind of shock there. But what I would say on money is that I come from Asian culture, and giving red packets is like very customary. And there's little ong pao or red packets have money in them. And that's pretty much how gifts are exchanged. But to me, Christmas is really about getting a present. It's like unwrapping something, right? In terms of like a Western ideal of Christmas. And I guess as I get a bit older, even though it gets harder, I do think that it's a bit of a cop-out. And the reason I think that is because you should, if you're going to know anyone well enough to buy them a gift, it should be your immediate family, right? But I think, and that's why, like, I think it's the process or the effort of actually trying to form that gift for someone that you love, which is more meaningful. Every other occasion, I'm cool with that kind of money. It's obviously more efficient. It's more useful. It's but really, like, for example, if you get a bunch of money from your grandparents or whatever, which usually happens, right? Like, if you don't see your grandparents, maybe they've retired to Queensland, and I'm talking about a white family here. And every Christmas they just transfer you $100, $200 or whatever, and then you use that $200 to buy groceries at Aldi, or like go towards your petrol or something. Like, is that really what Christmas is about? Is that the experience of Christmas that you want?
The problem is now, and I think we can contrast this to what I remember of Christmas the other day is that like period of excitement of like, yeah, what's this surprise gift that you don't know about or you never expected, and we talked this time last year about like, something that you wouldn't have even thought of getting, like, because there's a lot of thought that's gone into it, and you can be exposed to new things. But I think we're in a different world now. Like, I think, let's just look at the kids example, right? There's just so many, like, they have everything already. If you're talking about, I know, I'll go and buy them a beach cricket set or something, right? That's like generic enough. That's like, that's fun. Like, who doesn't like beach cricket? They probably already have 3 of them. And the fact is, I don't know what they have, right? And even if I think it's a good gift, like, it matches the profile of the person or whatever, like, I've got no idea if they do or don't have it. I could ask, I could find out, I could ask for suggestions from them.
So are you talking, Andy, more about, say, giving it to nephews and things now? Is that
what
you mean?
Yeah. So at that point, like, and especially once they reach a certain age when they are starting to save money, maybe for themselves, for like maybe bigger things that they want to buy. Maybe they want to buy something worth $200-$300 or something, and pull all of the Christmas money. And because remember, the thing that a kid doesn't have is an income, right? So this is actually valuable to them. Yeah, and the other thing is, like, so then if we're talking immediate family, we still do gifts and presents, so that's still the case. But
I mean, you can't be given cash like to your spouse, right? Like, that just makes the house of cards that is Christmas just tumble down. It's like, you give me 100, I'll give you 100. Like, oh my god,
no money for spouse, no, definitely not. But potentially for your child, potentially, if they're doing the same thing of like saving up.
Maybe you're like, young adult child.
Yeah. Well, I would say maybe the critical threshold is like, do they believe in Santa? So once they stop believing in Santa, that's when all bets are off, and you can like you've got like blank sheet of paper, like bring the butcher's paper out. It's all about scarcity. What's scarce to that person? So if money is scarce to a child, then money genuinely is useful. Okay, so we've talked about like cost of living, inflation. We mentioned that before. I mean, I've read articles, or I've seen articles, headlines like, people can't afford Christmas this year. So what do you think? Like, is this the low hanging fruit? Like, is it okay for Christmas to be like the low hanging fruit to just we'll just cut it this year? And
okay, this is how I feel about it. So if you need to cut it, if you need to cut it, you need to cut it. All right, full stop. And no one should ever judge you for doing that, right? You only have to answer to yourself and manage the relationships around you and your immediate family. What I would kind of counter that with is that if you had a particularly tough year, there is the type of person that needs this to be a bit of a release, a bit of a celebration, a kind of hope. Because I think, like, if you look at all the narratives that we've been given growing up, Christmas stories and movies and books and things, it's always about that. It's about the fact that you can have the worst year of your life, but somehow if the Christmas New Year period is good, it just kind of gives you that hope for the new year, that restart. And actually, some people are willing to go into debt to achieve that feeling, right? And for some people mentally, it might really be worth it. And I'm not talking about like, mortgaging the house so you can rent that boat, right? It's more just understanding that this is a period of the year that is important for symbolic value, for kind of mental relief from the hardships of the year, and that you should be celebrating. You should have a celebratory kind of mindset for those couple of days, even if it means that you'll be paying for it for the next month. And I get that too, right? Like, and it's obviously not a smart decision financially, but it could be a very smart decision to give you the motivation. Like, life can't be just all about the grind, year in, year out, like day in, trying to hustle, grind. You need periods of like celebration and reflection and hope, right? Like, otherwise you might not make it to the next year, And I think that I just want to call that out, that I'm totally fine that some people need this, right? They really need this, which is probably why they do it.
Spoken like a true household with no exposure to the recent increases in the CPI basket of goods.
No.
All right, so you brought up office, the banquet, the workplace banquet. Let's touch on Christmas in the office Christmas culture. So I'll just throw a few targets on the table. So should you get gifts or cards for your colleagues? How many Christmas parties should you have? Is it even okay to like wish someone Merry Christmas anymore?
I think for me, I'm a little bit more traditional about it. I actually think that, again, you can find offense with a lot of things these days, but can't we just treat it like how every corporate wants to treat it, which is a cruisy couple of weeks with free lunches and celebrations and a bit of Christmas cheer? Like, that's the charitable way to look at all of this, right? No, you don't have to do all that stuff. And actually, some of the forced Kris Kringle and Bad Santa can be quite taxing. But there's nothing wrong with it if the culture is into it. And in fact, Christmas parties, again, what I just spoke about around mental relief and getting through the next year, I know from working at different companies, and especially ones that are not doing well, the Christmas party is more important than ever. Cutting Christmas parties down to to nothing, to bare bones, that can be so demoralizing.
Okay, but I got a different angle to this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so most people work in imagine like an onion, right? There's like the person, the single employee at the core of the onion, and then each layer up is like a new sort of team. So they might have their unit, and then they might have their division, and they might have their broader group, and each one of them has a separate Christmas party. So you can have a situation, and then you maybe have some other affiliations, cross-organizational networks.
Are you saying that's like a preferable model?
Well, okay, so my question is, how many Christmas parties until it becomes a bit too much?
Well, yeah, I think this is why big corporations with, like you said, a full bag of onions tend to just say, no department Christmas parties. We're going to have one big one, right? And if you want to work out with your team, you go to lunch or something, self-fund it. And I think that's the best way if they're going to throw a decent, big, all-in love fest for the company. If it's going to be a dodgy one, then I think, let them have department funded parties, right? Because that can be very good for, the small teams and feeling like that close-knit family's there. In the good times, do both. In the bad times, maybe, you need to make a call on, what I see during the, the pandemic, and as companies were tightening their belts, they cut the big one completely, and then let the more functional teams have their own dinners and lunches and parties. And then as things got worse and worse, it's like, well, you just self-fund your own stuff, which is it's kind of how I've seen the trajectory. I think you need the big. I'm a fan of the big love-in altogether. I mean, how else are these onions going to sexually harass each other? I think this is the way it needs to be, and we're the stories that entertain you for the next year.
But the other thing, these Christmas parties, they might be kind of notionally called a Christmas party, but they're actually more like an end of year. Like, so all of those things are as much about like marking the end of the year. And of course, like not all workplaces, but like a lot of workplaces have some sort of a shutdown, or even if it's not like a shutdown, it might be people just generally taking leave at that time. So there is like there is a clear mark from one year to the next in that, December becomes January. And I think in that kind of latter half of December, you mentioned that like, oh yeah, take it easy or whatever. I don't think it's necessarily that people are taking it easy. It's that a significant portion of the workforce is like mentally checked out for that period, in that they're about to go on leave. So there's like before leave and after leave, and more things just get pushed. Oh, we'll do that next year. Like, oh, we'll worry about that thing next year. So it's like that clean sort of break, or that opportunity to have that clean break in terms of thinking about things. And so then throw in a few Christmas parties, although they might just be more end of year kind of celebrations or whatever. And it's a pretty festive time. So, and that's before the company spends a single dollar on any kind of event. But I must admit, like, I do feel that there is this sort of, sometimes it feels forced, the more like, we've got to have this thing now, right? Because it's like, it's the thing to do, right? Whereas I think
the Kris Kringles feel forced to me. I will admit that. I actually don't like them, and I like Bad Santa even less.
Come on, that's the
so
best.
Actually, I don't like that. I find it very forced. But I understand why they're trying.
What about like sentimental cards, like where you write a message?
That's the worst.
Yeah,
that's the worst, right? Because while it seems so innocent, I feel like, I don't know whether you've ever been blindsided by one, where some colleague has given you a sentimental card that's just like way more, like you realize in an instant that your friendship is very unbalanced, and they think about you in a much like more intense way than you thought about them. And I think that's the problem sometimes with these kind of like card giving things, that it can kind of open the door to that.
I think where it kind of doesn't work is, even if someone is completely genuine and of good faith in their motivations and all of that, it's so open to be perceived as like, this is just the thing that they're playing a role here. Like they're not, they're being the good boss, or they're being and
it's like the apple on the desk of the teacher, right? It's not it's not a good thing, right? Because it blurs this line between this idea of being generous and wanting favors, and I think that it gets you into a bit of tricky waters for something that is actually meant to be very innocent, right? Like, and it's a dying art. I actually think that it's a shame in some ways, being a bit nostalgic age-wise here. But, my parents, and probably your parents too, that like Christmas cards were a big thing. And I remember that, there was a period of time where literally like hundreds of Christmas cards were just written up with basic stuff, but were sent out and returned.
Yeah.
And there was this kind of like social contract between boomers that is like, I send you cards, you give me one back. I don't really say anything in them, but by the fact that you reciprocated this gesture means that we're still cool for another year.
So that's so right. It's so true. Like Christmas cards was like the boomers, like social media. It was like the equivalent of liking a post or something.
Social success as well, because every boomer always talks about the year that they stopped sending cards out, and they just go, oh, and then we didn't keep it up or whatever. And I really regret that, because now I don't get any cards because I don't send any cards.
Yeah.
Like, I think that it kind of encapsulates a lot of the things that we're talking about with Christmas. It's inefficient. It makes little sense. It's a waste of money, time. Someone has to fucking deliver them. Like, talk about like carbon footprint and all this kind of stuff, and like just literally a postman, changing these kind of cards everywhere, and the cards are all thrown away, and you got to buy all this kind of stuff, right? And handwrite them. And I think that it's like, it doesn't matter about all that inefficiency, because it's the thought, it's the spirit behind it, right? It's this idea that we're a society where we actually care that we keep up with the pretense of these things.
All right, Christmas Day itself, you mentioned your sort of sharing duties. Talk me through how you manage Christmas on the day, logistics. Like you mentioned, there's like 20 people. Like how is the contribution into the day and shared among the 20 people in an equitable sort of way?
Well, I don't think you can do it very well. You kind of have to be centered around a host who is actually taking the brunt of a lot of things. And it also depends on the stage that your family's at in terms of generations, right? So if you have a swarm of adult children who have young kids and there's grandparents involved, then you've got a lot more options because you can spread. You've got a lot of cooks in the kitchen, pretty much, that you can draw upon. A lot of like people who can help. I think where it gets really hard is if you only have you have you don't have a lot of people you can draw on to do the cooking and the logistics and all that kind of stuff. But I think on the whole, someone has to take the hit to host, and then people can help around the sides, But it's what needs to happen though is that host has to either do two things, they have to be able to do two things to pull it off. Number one is delegate, right? If they need help, delegate upfront, and ask for it. And if they don't do that, they need to accept their fate. I think and that's probably the biggest thing, right? Like they need to accept that this is going to be work for them and not be bitter and resentful for it and like have that seep out into the day and kind of like ruin everyone else's time. Because I've seen that happen as well. And it's hard, right? It's hard because you think you can do it, or you think, maybe you take on a bit too much and you expect people to kind of swoop in to help and they don't, or you expect people to lavish you with praise, but really you're just too stressed out and cranky to kind of get there in that kind of how you imagined it would be. And so, yeah, it's definitely a stressful time. I'm someone personally that I do like cooking, but I hate it as well. And I'm very angry in the kitchen. I cook angry. I'm like, it's stressful for me. It's not this kind of like dancing around an overflowing pot on the stove of pasta. It's very stressful. So I love feeding people. I love the overall end outcome, but it's stressful. And I think that for a lot of people, it's like that. And for our generation too, which probably don't host people as much as like our parents did in a formal way, it's even more stressful, I think, because we're not used to that. We don't do dinner parties as much. We don't cook as much. Our houses aren't set up for it. We don't even have the right stuff. Like it's just, we buy so much stuff, we go out so much, and I think that it's hard to get that balance. But in terms of spreading it equitably, that's what I think. Like accept your fate or ask for help. It can't be both. You can't just like do nothing and then just resent and be like a cranky bastard the whole time.
Yeah, I think with the host, like the tension is when the host sort of takes their role as being almost akin to like running a restaurant. So it's like you want to impress, you want to, and so the moment you're asking for help is the moment you're like conceding some sort of failure or something. So
I think family lines too. I just quickly add on that like asking help from your direct family versus like the in-laws is a totally different thing. And so I think you need to kind of also play with the cultural rules of how your family dynamics are.
Well, I want to tell a little bit of a story. So the way my kind of extended family is structured, my brother and his wife, they were married first. They're both the oldest of siblings in both families. And then so there's
the gold standard, first to break the ground.
Long story short, virtually every family gathering, they host. My brother and his wife host. And so where I'm going with this is we're not playing that sort of directorship role, right? We're not coordinating everything and what's got to happen. So I sought advice on how we can help, like what's the best dish that we could bring or contribution for the day or whatever, right?
How do I be useful but also stay out of your way?
And I should say this was a message I sent to my mum, right? Because my mum's sort of like a conduit into the whole
she's on the committee.
Anyway, so they came back the reply. So we've now been relegated. So I'll read it verbatim.
Oh no.
So it was suggested that by the broader collective that we bring 2 of those Caesar salads in plastic containers from Aldi.
Oh my god, are you serious? Like that? That's amazing. The ones with like the rip-off lids.
I'm just like, and I sort of, I mean,
mixed emotions. You're like, oh, this is gonna be a bargain. I should have bought my son that Insta 360.
Well, I'm just trying to think what's going on. Is like, is it like,
is it like the Christmas insult wrapped in a?
What I can't work out is it, they're too busy. They're moving and they're, we'll have too much food anyway. So let's just give. Yeah. But like the thing is, like, you don't want to. At the end of the day, you want to contribute something of yourself to the day, even if it's superfluous.
Yeah.
There's some utility in doing more than just buying some salad bowls from Aldi, right? Whether it's cooking something, making something, but just something a bit more meaningful than, $10.
You know what you should do, and you should be like, well, Mum, times are hard this year, right? And the inflation, those salad bowls have gone up. Would it be okay if we just maybe curate the Spotify playlist this year instead, and that can be my contribution?
Oh, we couldn't do that. Funny.
It's a great story, actually. And just as a power move, you should like get the most posh kind of like David Jones pre-packaged Caesar salad.
It's a good idea, actually.
Keep the label on, and just like put them there.
Just like nail a turkey and like cook it perfectly, and like. Yeah. Which one do you think's better?
Put it in a cloche and like unveil it with like a little bit of smoke inside. But yeah, I mean, people definitely.
Tell you what I should do.
Go overboard.
This is a really good idea. I'm going to do and see if I'm going to do a beef Wellington.
Give it to me. Oh yes.
And the irony is,
you got to make some jokes about Asian mushrooms.
Well, I was going to say, like, the irony is, like, because that would be such a power move, right? Bringing like a beef Wellington, like with a $180 cut of meat, and they won't, and they'll always like all be second guessing. Is that like death cap mushrooms around the side?
That's a great idea. Have you made a beef Wellington before, though?
I have not.
That might be the true Christmas miracle. It's definitely not an easy dish.
Well, I've seen the Gordon Ramsay video, so.
Well, if you've seen a video, you'd be set.
So let's just end this with one Christmas wish for tomorrow.
Yeah, have you got one?
All right, I'll go first. I wish that all of those dedicated listeners of The Middle at Christmas tomorrow will tell all of their friends and family about what a great podcast this is, and share the gift of The Middle to their families and loved ones.
Andy, that's amazing. We didn't even rehearse that. Yeah, my wish is that everyone brings a Caesar salad, a packaged Caesar salad, whether they've been asked to or not, just as a side, and just see whether it gets opened.
Just leave them in the fridge and just see if they...
You take it home with you. You take it home with you. There's no one's going to have that. I'll just take it back. Don't you hate people that do that, though? Like, talking about the spirit of generosity, you know the type of person that actually brings something to a party and then they're actually really pedantic about taking it back. You know what I'm talking about.
All right. Well, happy Christmas, and we'll see you next week when we talk about our Spotify Unwrapped for 2023.
Merry Christmas to all.
Merry Christmas. Ciao.